Hey guys, and welcome to another guitar lesson with me, Rex Pearson from rexpearson.com. Hope you guys have had an awesome week as usual, and I hope you enjoyed the music theory lesson that I launched last week. It seemed to be pretty popular, where you could learn every note on the fretboard in 10 minutes. It sounded impossible, but I think most people were getting it, and all the answers that I've had submitted were actually correct. I haven't had one person get it wrong. So well done to everyone who answered the question. If you're not sure what I'm on about, you might want to head to the lesson that's over here on the left hand side. Today is kind of an extension on that. I'm going to show you how you can play 60 different chords in the space of this lesson. Now, how can we do that? Well, most people will learn every individual chord shape and kind of treat it as a different chord. So you might learn your C major chord, then as you get a bit more advanced and you get into bar chords, you might learn a sort of a D sharp minor chord, and you learn that as an individual shape. There's a much easier way of approaching chords and learning chords. There are three concepts that if you understand, just like learning every note on the fretboard, then you'll be able to learn every chord on the fretboard as well. And it's a little tip that I picked up from a couple of guitarists and sort of pieced together over the years, and I'm going to share it with you guys now because it's a massively helpful tool to learn. We're going to start with just the major chord, and by the end of this lesson you're going to be able to play every single major chord on the guitar lesson, every single major chord on the guitar with this lesson. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started, and I'll teach you the first step to being able to play every chord on your fretboard, every major chord. Now, step one to learning every chord on the fretboard is to be able to know the root notes of the main open position chords. Now, this sort of system that I'm about to teach you is related to a system called the cage system. So if you do want to do a bit of background reading, then you can have a look up on the cage system, but I find that it's taught very matter-of-factly, and you don't get the most use out of it as the way that I'm going to try and teach you guys. So hopefully it's going to be a bit of a different take on the cage system. I don't like to call this the cage system because it's not quite the same approach to learning it. You need to know the root notes of your main chords, the C, A, G, E and D. It spells caged, that's where the link to the cage system comes from. So, the root note of the chord is on the 5th string, the A string, here. And you need to remember that, where the root note of your chord is. Now, a root note is where the chord is built from. And it's generally called like the home note, and in improvisation things, it's where you want to stick around. So that bottom note in C major is a C. That's your root note on the 5th string. The next chord, the A shape. Now, I say A shape, it's an A major chord, but we're going to refer to these as shapes. You've got C shape, this is the A shape. The root note, again, is on the 5th string, but this time it's kind of built below where you're fretting rather than the highest note. Then you have your G shape. Now the root note is on the G, the bottom low E string, and you can see where the chord is built around from that G. The next one is the E shape, and again it's on the 6th string, and this time lower than the rest of the chord. You can see the root note is going to be the open string here, the chord is built up around it. After the E you've got the D shape, and the D chord, this time it's an open D. So you can see that the root note would be the open string here, and then the chord is built above it with the notes higher. So, recap those root notes. Be able to play the root and the chord. Know that you've got your C, A, G, E and D shapes down before we then attempt the next part, which is where we really start to unlock the fretboard. Now you know where the root notes are in your open position and in your shapes, C, A, G, E and D shapes. We're going to then move it through the fretboard. So we're going to start with C because it's the first chord in the cage sort of system. And then we're going to learn to build this up the fretboard, because whether you know it or not, there's more than one place that you can play any one chord. And that's why you'll see many of the bar chords are used based off of some of these shapes, and you'll see it pretty clearly if you've tried to do bar chords before. This might be, hopefully enlightening for you. So you've got the C. Root note is here. The next chord in the sequence is going to be an A because we're spelling caged. Now we looked at where the root note was of an A chord, and the root note was on the 5th string. Well, from C, the root note is going to be from the 5th string. There's your root note, C. Now we need to build the A shape from this chord, and it's all about transferring the A shape we learned before, the one that looks like this, into a bar chord, so then we can shift it up to the 5th fret. Now if you imagine the A chord is here, you could pull a capo along here, and then you're playing an A shape. But we're going to have to do a bar chord. Now the easiest way that I know of doing this is using either the fourth finger or the 3rd finger barring across to create the A shape. Generally you don't need the top note, but you can just play those 4 strings. Now this is a tough chord shape. Very rarely used unless you're a more advanced guitarist, but if you're a beginner that's going to be really difficult. For now it's worth knowing that C appears here as a C shape, using the root note as our pivot point, then you build your A shape from there. The next one in the sequence is a G shape. Now the way I teach people to find your G, we know that we're on a G chord, it's on the 6th string. Because we're playing C, we need to find our C on our 6th string. If you know your fretboard, you might be able to find it anyway, but I like to use my ear. There's our C. There's our C there. Good ear training to be able to find out where you can play the same note on the fretboard on different strings. With this, you build your G chord. Now, in open position, it would look like this. But because of the 2 open strings, they're not going to go quite well with the C major chord. What would actually be happening is you would bar across here and build a G major chord. Now this shape is very rarely used because of all the stretching that's involved, but for now you could pick out each note and try and see the shape on your fretboard, sort of like a fretboard diagram of the G shape, and know that the G major chord is linked here to the A shape, to the C shape. They all kind of link together to create another way that you can play C chord. The next one is going to be an E, and we know from before the root note of our E is on the low 6th string. We just did our G chord here from the 8th fret. So from this note we're going to build an E major chord. Now this one's one of the most popular of the caged chords. It's an E shape. And because we're building it off of our C note here, we're building a new way of playing C major. Now there's one final chord. Again, this one is very rarely used because it's difficult to fret. We know it's a D shape and it's going to be on the 4th string, the D string here. This note. So we're going to build our chord shape from here. And you've got to try and imagine a D shape above it. Now this is the D shape. If you imagine a bar chord like a capo being played here, you'd play a D shape, but we've got to do a bar chord here across the 4 strings. Quite a tough chord to be able to play, and it's not one that is, you know, very easy to do. After the D shape, you'll see this little triangle of notes here is very similar to the C shape that you started with. If you imagine the open strings here, so you can build your C shape from your D shape here. What you then end up having is C in the C shape, a C in the A shape, a C in the G shape, a C in the E, and a C in the D. And then it repeats. A, G, all the way up until you run out of frets basically. That is how you can play 5, 6, almost 7 different positions of the same chord, and that will unlock the C major chord all the way up the fretboard. Then it's a very simple process from there. That's the hardest thing. Once you crack that, everything else is going to come much quicker. And let me demonstrate how you can do this with another chord. Okay, many of you beginners out there will know your F major chord. Well, now with your newfound theory knowledge, you should see that this chord shape is based off of the E shape. The root note is an F. This note here. If we wanted to play a couple of different F major chords, let's say we wanted to play an A shape. Well, we know that the F is going to be on the 5th fret, somewhere along this A string. So we find our F along the A string. Now if you know your fretboard, if you followed the lesson that I did before this will be a very simple task. You'll eventually come up with the 8th fret here on the A string as being your F note. Now you could build your A shape from here to play an F chord. And that is an F chord, F major. Another way of playing it. Okay, let me give you one more example then. Let's say we were going to do a D major chord, but using the A shape rather than the standard D shape. Well, again, you know that the 5th string is going to have your root note. If you know how to count your frets here and know the musical alphabet like I've showed in the previous videos, you should know that the D note is going to land you here on the 5th fret on the A string. Then you can build your A shape from there. And if you wanted a different one, because we're in the A sequence, you could go to the next one in the caged, which would be a G. G has a root note on the 6th string, a low E, so you find that note on the 6th string, and then you build your G chord. But again, we don't really use that. You could use the E shape or the D shape, an octave higher than the open D. So you can see how you can unlock every chord shape. Now there are 12 different notes in the musical alphabet. You know, A sharp, B, C, all the way through. And there are 5 positions for each chord that you now know with just that theory. And that's it, guys. That's basically how you can learn 60 different major chords in the time it took to do this lesson. The next lesson, or the next stage on from this, would be to apply this to minor chords, or to dominant 7th chords, or to some of the more extended, sort of lesser used chord progressions and chords that you might use in future. But the theory that you've done in this lesson will make those incredibly easy. If you can build caged with C, then you can build caged with any chord shape, whether it's major, which we have covered here. With minor, it's only going to need a couple of extra little concepts there just to build every chord in a minor chord shape. And that applies to every chord shape. It's one of the easiest ways of learning chords, so you don't have to learn and memorize every single chord that you come across. You can literally work out every single chord that you need to come across or need to actually play. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure there might be a few questions on this, and if there is, if you've got a question, comment section below, or don't forget you can add me on Facebook or Twitter. I'm pretty active on both of them, so if you want to actually chat to me live, then by all means send me a message and ask the question, and I will do my best to answer it. I'll catch you all on next Sunday, where we're going to be doing something that I'm not going to tell you about because you're going to tune in on Sunday. I'll see you then.